We're gonna start by mixing our pizza dough, room temperature water. And to this, we're gonna add 2 grams of instant yeast. So we're just gonna use our hands to dissolve it. So once that's nicely dissolved in the water, that's when we can add our gluten-free flour. There are so many different options for gluten-free pizza flours or flours in general. So you want a flour that's mainly made of wheat starch, and Caputo Fiore gluten is one of those available. So to our yeasty water, we're gonna add 320 grams of this flour. Because there's no gluten in gluten-free flour, we don't actually have to knead this dough. We just need the flour to absorb water and become nice and even. So I'm just scraping any dry bits of flour that have stuck to the bowl so that we can incorporate them into the dough. Just like in a normal dough, each time you add an extra ingredient to the dough, it actually starts to change the composition of the dough. So it's really cool to kind of observe the dough feeling different each step of the way. As you can see, once we added the salt, there's less dough stuck to my hand because the salt helps the dough keep together in place of gluten. To the dough, we're adding 16 grams of extra virgin olive oil, which we are going to squish in to incorporate. I tried versions with and without olive oil when I was testing this recipe, and I really liked the flavor it imparted, as well as making the dough more similar to the texture of regular pizza dough, which you can see already. Once that's nicely incorporated, I'm just going to use this dough scraper to get the remaining bits off my fingers. Place a little bit of oil on my hands to pat this into a smooth top. Smoothing the top just helps the dough trap air. And because this dough doesn't have gluten, it needs a little bit of a helping hand in trapping air so that we can still get that lovely airy crust. And then we're going to cover this to let the dough bulk ferment. For your best chance, definitely place the dough somewhere nice and warm, nice and cozy. And keep an eye on your dough so that you know when to move on to the next step. Our gluten-free dough has more than doubled in size, which means that we can portion. So the cool thing about gluten-free dough is that we don't have to worry as much about over-fermenting the dough. With normal dough, over-fermenting would weaken the gluten, but since this is gluten-free, it's no worries. Good trick is to oil up our hands a little bit to prevent the dough from sticking, because with gluten-free dough, it tends to be quite sticky. And the bottom of the tubs. I'm just gonna release the dough from the sides of the bowl, and I'm just cutting it in half, and we're gonna weigh it to be about 300 grams. What? Oh, ounces. I was like, 10? So I'm gonna cut off 20 grams of this to put onto the other. What you can do is you can pat the dough down to create a smooth, even surface, because you can see that if we don't do that, it's got these little pores, like almost like a sponge, because the air that was trapped inside has kind of made its way out of the dough since it doesn't have gluten to trap that in like a balloon. We're gonna just pat that to make the dough nice and smooth again. Once that's looking nice, we're gonna just place them into containers. So we're just gonna place the lids on, transfer these to the fridge where they'll cold ferment for about 2 days. So you can use the dough on the same day and move straight on to the final proof step. But just like regular dough, if you give the dough time in the fridge, it's gonna develop more flavor and taste amazing. We've left this in the fridge for a couple of days. And as you can see, our yeast is incredibly active and they've grown to fill the tub. So we're going to get them out because we're making pizza today. Luckily, the oil in the dough has prevented the lid from sticking to the dough, which is great. And you can see it's so lovely and fluffy. It's got so much air developed in, and that's gonna really make the texture of the pizza nice and light. Release it from the sides of the tub, because we're trying to keep some of the air bubbles in this time. And once it's nicely released from the side of the tub, we can tip it out onto our counter. And we're gonna shape it into a nice circle again, patting the top like we did earlier. And then we're gonna place it in this tray to do its final proof. So we just wanna make sure that there's room for the 2 dough balls to expand, because this part is called final proof. If your room temperature is warm, it will take 2 hours, but if it's on the colder side, you're gonna wanna leave the dough for 4 hours instead. And we're back after 2 hours. Our dough has proofed, so you can see that it's relaxed outwards and it's still lovely and airy. So let's make some pizza. Semolina is not gluten-free. So for this, we're using fine cornmeal. You can also use fine chickpea flour. But basically, we want a flour with a golden hue, which is gonna give us a lovely golden brown effect. If you use a white flour, it'll just make your crust turn out a little bit pale, that's all. I also love the flavor that the cornmeal imparts on the final pizza. So we're just gently removing the dough ball and then tipping it top down into the bowl of cornmeal. And then we're just gonna give that a flip to coat both sides. Now, because gluten-free flour doesn't have gluten in it, we have to be a little bit more gentle with this dough. We're dusting the bench generously with cornmeal so that it doesn't stick, and then we're transferring our dough. And so we're gonna start by forming the crust, just as we would with a regular pizza. So I like to leave about 1 centimeter of crust here. And we're being gentle to trap the air in because we still want that beautiful, airy, Neapolitan-like crust. People like to use a rolling pin to roll out their gluten-free dough, and it's certainly faster. But if you want to get that air in the crust, I recommend hand stretching. So we're just gently pushing out the crust because this dough isn't going to hold together if we try to pick it up and stretch it like a regular pizza dough. Now and again, it's also worth working some cornmeal underneath the base to make sure it's not sticking. All right, that's looking good. So now we're gonna top this like you would a regular pizza. Today we're gonna make a salami pizza. So I'm gonna start with the tomato base. Just good quality tomatoes and salt, that's all you need. And then we're gonna make it rain Parmigiano. And then we're going to add some fior di latte. And then to this, we're going to add our beautiful fresh basil. I always like to kind of coat the basil leaves in olive oil so that they don't burn in the oven. Finally, we've got this beautiful salami. So we're going to be generous with this because they do tend to shrivel up once they've been baked in the oven. And so we're going to get this onto our peel. Definitely shake off the excess cornmeal from the bottom so that it doesn't burn on your oven stone. So we're going to just give this one last gentle final stretch. We have to be very gentle with gluten-free dough. All right, and that is ready for the oven. And we are going to bake this on high flame because we want to trap all the moisture in that crust. So we're baking with the Neapolitan arch today, which is going to give us a really nice spotting on our crust. So if you see the toppings on your pizza cook a little bit faster than the crust, you can always use the turning peel to shield it so that it stops the toppings from burning before your crust is ready. This is almost done. Looking good. Voila, a gluten-free pizza. Because we were gentle with the crust, we managed to trap air in there so you can see that the crust is puffed up in the oven, which is what we love. And I cannot wait to eat this. I placed the pizza on a wire rack. I like the undercarriage to set so the steam escapes from the bottom, meaning that your pizza is less likely to flop. We got a little bit of charring on the undercarriage. Typically, gluten-free pizzas char a little bit less on the undercarriage than regular pizzas. We're gonna have everyone's favorite, Glenn, our sound guy.
So I don't know what's been going on. This just looks like a regular pizza.
Well, what if I told you that this pizza's
No, don't tell me anything.
Let's cut to the chase and eat this baby. All right.
Eating that, I never know what I don't know about this pizza. So it's very well done. It's the perfect pizza.
We wanted to get the gluten-free pizza to taste as much like the real deal as possible. Glenn, would you say this is Glenn approved? For more great recipes, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can find the recipe for this on Gozney.com.
Subscribe to the Gozney YouTube.